Hello friends, Worm the Glaive Keeper here today, and I wanted to talk about everybody's most beloved melee weapon archetype, the glaive. Because the glaive right now is not in a great position, and Bungie has already talked about the fact that they are looking at a potential, rework to glaives and how they work. But today I really wanted to talk about glaives, talk about where they're falling short, why they're falling short, and some ways, some ideas rather, that I have to maybe buff them so that we can start seeing them more in various aspects of the game. So, for starters, where do we not see glaives? Basically everywhere except for like maybe casual content. Okay, we don't see glaives in PvP. I mean, every now and then you'll see the madman running the glaive, and maybe he does well, maybe he doesn't. I've never seen somebody use a glaive in a Grandmaster, never seen somebody use a glaive in a raid, never seen somebody use a glaive in really any high level content, right? And that's unfortunate, but we're going to talk about why here in just a second. But we don't see glaives in a lot of these, and I think the overall idea of a glaive buff would be targeted towards these more difficult activities, because right now I think glaives are in a fantastic spot in any sort of regular content, right? Like if you're just running casual strikes, you know, using a glaive is going to do great. You know, the ability to kill lots of enemies with melee, not have to use any ammo, get a shield, blah blah blah, that's all fine and dandy. But again, in these high level activities like Grandmasters and stuff, you don't see glaives used very much. And the same thing in PvP, right? So I wanted to talk today about some ideas that I have. Maybe we could buff glaives in PvP and buff them in high level content. So starting off, I want to start with PvE first. So I think weapons shine, or I think glaives are going to shine more in PvE than in PvP. And what is the number one reason we don't see glaives in in-game content? It's quite simple. They're melee weapons, okay? I don't think I've ever seen anybody use any type of close range weapon in Grandmaster content outside of maybe an SMG. Like you could make arguments for SMGs, but I don't see people use shotguns in Grandmaster content. I don't see people use glaives. I don't see people use swords. Like I don't see people using a lot of weapon archetypes. And it's not so much that they're bad. It's the fact that Grandmasters are so, you know, you are a little glass box, right? Like Guardians are very fragile. You know, you take, you know, a couple shots from 3 red bars and you're done, right? And so obviously having a shotgun where you run up in there and you shoot an enemy to kill it, blah blah blah, whatever, you know, isn't really the most optimal, especially if there's multiple enemies. Not only that, but in Grandmaster content, enemies have a lot higher health pools, so having, you know, something like insert whatever PvE shotgun you love, right? Having that against enemies with higher health, like, yeah, I'm sure it could probably still one-shot a lot of these, you know, minor enemies. But then if you get to the areas where you have like knights, like, you know, fallen captains, stuff like that, they're typically not going to go down in one shot unless you're using an exotic shotgun, which even exotic shotguns, you know, you can make an argument obviously for, the new raid one, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, conditional finality, you know, because it can freeze targets. But I think most players don't use shotguns because you have to be close. And it's the same thing with glaives. Like glaives are really not effective at range because half their kit is for melee abilities, right? Like they're built around being a melee weapon with a projectile kind of built into it. They're not projectile built with a melee into it. It's, you know, it's the other way around. So first, you know, that's why we don't see glaives, in my opinion, right? And the changes that would have to happen to glaives in order to, I guess, make them more viable in in-game content would have to be something that helps with that aspect right there. Okay, so yeah, that's why we don't see glaives. Now, what would be the biggest change Bungie could do to make glaives more viable in in-game content? That's a tough question. I would say that one of the biggest changes they could do just in general for glaives is allow glaives to synergize with every perk in the game. Okay, and what do I mean by synergize? I mean, you know, for example, if you're using what is the one, the Judgment of the Kel'Grass, whatever, blah blah, the glaive that came from 2 seasons ago. Right, it has incandescent. Why not have the ability to proc incandescent with a melee? Right, I mean, for me, I don't see a good reason why. You know, for you know, another one, kill clip. Right, why does kill clip not synergize with the melee? I mean, obviously it wouldn't work very well. You know, if you had kill clip on it, it's like, oh, well, you know, you get a melee kill, then you have to reload it, and then you get a damage boost to melee. But still, it would help, right? You know, like it wouldn't be for nothing. And one of the biggest ones I can think was Rampage. What is it? The Enigma, the very first glaive we ever got in Destiny 2. I was very excited because I saw it could get Rampage on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm gonna get Rampage on it. You know, it's gonna be really good. Yeah, wrong. Does not synergize with Rampage. And so Bungie, you know, I know what they're going for. They want it to be an uncharged melee because they are afraid that glaives will be too powerful if you give them synergy with certain perks. But at the same time, the synergy with these perks is kind of needed on glaives, especially in that high level content. You know, I know in regular content you don't need Rampage because Rampage is going to kill most enemies in one hit, right? But in Grandmaster, like, could you imagine you've got Rampage on there, you know, you get a kill with it, then you start doing more damage, then you can go from, you know, killing enemies in maybe like 2 shots to now 1-shotting enemies and just go into town, you know. And then it can of course synergize with your subclass stuff, you know, with like Void, for example. You know, you can start health regen, blah blah blah, whatever. I think that would be one of the biggest changes that Bungie could make to glaives. And here's the thing, if there are any perks, which I've thought through a bunch of like the most popular perks, I guess, I haven't thought of any that would be like blatantly broken, with the exception of maybe chill clip. But I think the thing with chill clip is just don't put chill clip on a glaive. Like if Bungie is concerned about a perk being too busted on a glaive when it's associated with the melee ability, then they just literally don't put it on there, right? If they're scared Rampage is going to ramp the damage up too much, don't put it on there. Okay, but there's no reason why other perks shouldn't work with glaives. Okay, now that is in my opinion one of the biggest things that they could do. If you think of any reasons why this wouldn't be a good idea, let me know in the comments, because of course I haven't thought of every single perk in the game, and I know y'all have some really good thoughts that I often don't think about. So let me know in the comments. But moving on to the second thing, glaives, they are kind of slow. Okay, the melee ability, and yes, the melee is technically faster than, you know, your standard melee, you know, just punching, but it still feels kind of slow, especially when you are trying to take on a horde of enemies. And if you are in Grandmaster content, like it's a death sentence, right? It is a death sentence, unless maybe you're using the Vex Caliber, you know, and you're getting overshield and stuff like that. But, you know, for the most part, I think that it's not really wise to use a glaive because they're slow, right? Speed up the melee animation, you know, especially like in the Crucible, it takes 3 hits, you know, it takes 2 punches, takes 3 hits. I'm pretty sure, and I have not done any testing, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that you can melee a Guardian twice before they can hit you with a glaive 3 times. Like I said, I could be totally wrong on that, but like, why not have the glaive? Like if you're going to use the glaive melee just a little bit faster. And the speed I'm talking about here is if you ever used a glaive and you have the shield up, when you're holding your shield up and you start meleeing, you actually melee a little tiny bit faster. Have that just intrinsically built into the weapon. You know, then if you hold your shield, then you can melee even faster than you can now. But like that speed right there is in my opinion, kind of the optimal speed for glaive melees, right? And that would help them, of course, in PvE and in PvP. But that's another one of my thoughts. But also the reload speed is absolutely atrocious on glaives. Now I understand why, okay, because there's a lot of reload, you know, perks like a replenishing Aegis, grave robber, stuff like that will actually reload your weapon on, you know, kills or whatever, taking damage, whatever. But glaive reloads feel incredibly slow, and it's almost like, you know, you're taking on the fight for a long time. And glaives are not a weapon type that you can really like take out of the fight. Like they are a melee based weapon, right? A melee based weapon. You cannot sit back for 5 seconds and wait for a reload, because I don't know if that's actually how long it takes, but that's how long it feels. And 5 seconds in Destiny 2 is a long time, you know, and any Grandmaster content or any content in general, the reload speed just feels so freaking slow. Okay. But yeah, those are the primary PvE changes. Outside of that, I don't really have any other ideas for what could make them potentially better in PvE. Now for PvP, this is this is a more difficult playing field, because glaives, They're not very prominent. They can be frustrating to go against, but I wouldn't ever say that a glaive is really good by any means. And I think that it's, again, same thing as kind of Grandmasters. A couple reasons why are, number one, players love using shotguns. Okay. You know, you can't get close to enemies to kill them with a glaive without being killed first by, you know, shotguns. Immortal spam is going on, not spam, but immortal and SMGs are incredible right now. Sidearms are incredible at close range. Like, there's a lot of weapons that are incredible at close range that will kill you so fast before you can get to an enemy with your glaives melee ability. And so I'm thinking for PvP, and this, you know, again, I'm not an expert here, but for PvP, what if Bungie allowed players to get a 2 melee kill on Guardians, maybe like tier 8 resilience and below, right? Have glaives deal just enough damage so that if you want to kill somebody in 2 hits, if they are below tier 8 if they are below tier 9 resilience, technically tier 8 and under, so below tier 9, have them die in 2 hits. I think that would substantially increase the amount of time, like play time, you would see with glaives, because then, you know, if you're charging at somebody and they shotgun you, they don't just have, you know, instead of just having to melee you to clean you up, you now have an opportunity to actually kill them, right? But yeah, I think that having that be a thing, and that, again, that'd be something I would want to see tested in like Crucible Labs or something, because I think that might be a little bit OP. Right, but I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of ideas here. Also, the whole idea of the glaive shield, like, it's decent and all, but I think the shield is a little bit underwhelming in PvP, because first of all, you have to hit a target with your glaives projectile in PvP to even get some shield energy. Then that shield, well, yes, it is 70% damage resistance, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't always feel like that's enough to stop from dying, because remember, when you are blocking with a glaive, especially if you're running low on ammo or if an enemy's at a distance, you have to shoot them while you block. Not only that, but not only just shoot them, but you are moving very, very slow, right? You know, while you're blocking damage and stuff. So I think that's, you know, something about the, I don't know how I'm trying to word this. I think something with the, like, you know, the shield not duration. The shield's damage resistance should be slightly higher, or the shield's movement speed should be better. Now, for me, I personally lean towards making the shield's movement speed a little bit faster. I would say not even a little bit, make it move at whatever speed your Guardian standard walk speed is. And I know that's, I'm trying to make up scenarios in my head. I don't think that would be absolutely busted by any means. I think that it could give glaives a little bit more viability and a little bit more maneuverability in PvP, but I don't think by any means that would be a broken thing to have for glaives, right? Imagine, you know, you're a hunter, especially hunter, Triton, whatever it's called, the Triton grips or whatever they are, you know, and you want to use a glaive in PvP. Tier 10 mobility is going to allow you to absolutely glide across the battlefield with that glaive. So, you know, you shoot an enemy, you kill him, you get a little glaive energy, then you start, you know, moving across lanes. You can block shots. This would give glaives utility. In something like Trials, for example, you could go have your teammate walk beside you, you know, across a lane, then everybody's safe from sniper shots. I also think that another change that could potentially be made is every time you spawn with a glaive, you automatically spawn with at least a little bit of glaive shield energy, right? And this is one, again, I've played around with them in my head. I don't think it would be busted by any means, but again, I'm not a developer. I haven't seen it in action. I want to hear you guys' thoughts on it. But imagine you spawn in, you have about 25% glaive energy. That way, for your first engagement, you have a slight leg up, because glaives, again, they don't one-shot people in the Crucible. You can't hit crits with them. You can only, you know, I think it's 2 shots to kill with a glaive. I don't know how much damage they do, but I think it's 2 shots to kill with a glaive. So if you start with that little bit of energy, it's going to give you maybe even not 25, maybe 10% energy. It's going to give you enough to put up your shield, get 1 shot off, and then put you at a more fair advantage on the battlefield with the person who you're challenging, you know, whether it's, you know, if they got SMG or whatever it is, because remember, you will still take damage. Like, it's not like you are invincible like you are in PvE, because in PvE, I think it's 97.5% damage resistance, which is insane. Especially on lower late Titan, you can literally be invincible forever. But in PvE, it's only 70% damage resistance. And of course, if you have tier 10 resilience, it's, you know, a little bit higher technically. But yeah, I think that having just even starting with a 10% glaive energy would substantially help them out in PvP, because then, you know, you can get a glaive going. Because unlike other weapons, you know, say take for example, different times, or I'm sorry, no, different times. The new Strand Pulse Rifle. It's a great gun. It can get a great roll. It can get Heating Up and Golden Tricorn. But in order to make Heating Up and Golden Tricorn work, you have to get the ball rolling. You have to get at least one kill, right? You have to get at least one kill. Then you can get it going. For glaives, you are at a substantial disadvantage because you don't get to get the ball rolling. Not only that, but glaives are very difficult to get the ball rolling on, right? Like glaives are not like different times where you've got a pretty decent pulse rifle, you know, with no perks. Then when you activate perks, it just when you activate the perks, it just gets better. No, with glaives, you are starting at a substantial disadvantage in any fights. So I think that, yeah, having that little bit of shield every time you spawn would help. I think it would just help glaives out a little bit. It would give them the boost they need so that people who want to, you know, main glaives, so to speak, in PvP and really learn with them and play with them, it would give you like a leg up, right? Instead of being at a disadvantage. And especially on some of these maps, like Widow's Court, the Fortress here, you know, what's another big old map that I can think of off the top of my head? You know, Eternity. These maps are not glaive friendly maps. That's another thing I forgot to mention earlier, was one of the reasons you don't see glaives in PvP is because there's not a lot of glaive friendly maps. But yeah, the whole, you know, the maps that we have currently, none of them are incredibly glaive friendly. So again, I think that little bit of shield at the start would be enough to push glaives to a point where, hey, we can now do this, you know, you now have a little bit of an advantage so that you can get the ball rolling on it. But yeah, I don't know. That's my thoughts on glaives. I love the weapon archetype, but it's so hard to make a decision to use them because they're not really that good. Like I could use a glaive or I could use something like a trace rifle, which is much better. You know, in PvE here, I could use a trace rifle, I could use a fusion rifle, I could use a shotgun. Like there are so many better options or than glaives in PvE. And of course in PvP, I mean, I would never touch a glaive in PvP because they're so weak. But yeah, I don't know though. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, how do you feel about what I said for the PvE nerfs? How do you feel about what I said for the PvP nerfs? Or I'm sorry, buffs, not nerfs. How would you feel about the PvE buffs that we talked about? How would you feel about the PvE buffs we talked about? How do you feel especially about the little bit of shield duration that you get in a PvP match every time you spawn? I think that would be a really good things for glaives. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe for more daily Destiny content because we do this every single day. And hey, do me a favor, go watch the video you see on the end screen because for whatever reason YouTube thinks that you will like it. I will catch y'all in the next one. Bye for now.